Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Adventure Travel Club television show. We have just landed in England, and here's our guide, Angela. And Betty, she's going to take us right from the airport, and we're going to head right out to Stonehenge.
Oh, she's going to take us. We're not going on the bus?
No, I mean, well, of course we're going on the bus.
All right. Well, I'm glad about that. So they had me worried there for a little bit.
No, so we're going to waste no time today. We're going to get right out to Stonehenge.
And what a nice day, huh?
Oh, beautiful day, yeah.
Really nice
clouds
day.
Come in and keep going, and there we can see Stonehenge there from a distance. But we have arrived. You know, I thought Stonehenge was so interesting because it was built in 3 stages. And I thought that I always heard, well, the Druids built that, you know, but that's not necessarily so. I think they came along later from the things that I understand anyway. But, you know, that goes back for 4,500 years. And Betty, those are burial mounds out there too. And in the early days, or the first stages, they say of Stonehenge that the whole communities were buried there, and the people
like
were
they
cremated.
had plagues or something, I guess.
Could be. But then later on, toward the Bronze Age, then there were single family burials from there. But we can see Stonehenge here, and we took this from a lot of different sites so that you might be able to get a real picture as though you're really, really there. And I think, to me, it's very exciting to go here because all of these places around here, there was a big ditch, of course, around the stones, and they were dug by hand, and they used animal bones, deer antlers, which were used like, you know, pickaxes, and this was sort of a chalky soil right here. And then they used the blades of oxen and cattle for shovels to clear away for the stones, and they know that by the carbon dating, you know, of all of this, that it was built over 50 centuries ago.
Well, they were ingenious. I mean, every age has its artisans and know how to use the different artifacts. But I'm thinking, you talked about the Bronze Age, and then you talked about, what was the other one? The Bronze Age and... I don't know, but there was another one. And you know what I was thinking?
What?
Thank God we're now in the golden age. You know, we've come a long way, baby.
Yes, I think we really have. We really have. Well, I'll tell you, around 3000 BC, that's when they say the first Stonehenge started. And it just consisted of a ditch. It was a ring, and 56 pits were there. And then around 2500 BC, they brought in what they called the blue stones. And these came all the way from the mountains in Wales.
I looked up that word in the dictionary, and they do have bluestone here in Vermont.
Really?
Yeah.
But these didn't come from Vermont.
Well, we don't
These
know.
came from Wales.
But you know why they call them bluestone?
No. Are they blue?
They're partly blue and gray. They have a bluish gray color to them.
I see.
But I wasn't sure either. So I come home and look up in the dictionary, and that's what they are.
Well, then around 2300 BC, they had what they call the sandstones, and those are the big guys that you see right there. Now, Betty, on top of what do they call the things on the top?
All right, that's something else I looked up because we see these here. I mean, that's not something that's just for this. Those are called lintels. And I thought perhaps they were like the lentil beans that you make such goods. Those are lentil, though.
You're right.
But those are the top. Those are the formation that the uprights stay on to hold them together.
And actually they notched those things, didn't they?
They had to notch them, and you know if we call them lintels today. That has not changed.
Over the door.
Up over our door is
Right.
called the lintel. Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, I thought there's been a lot of mythology, of course, that goes along with Stonehenge naturally, and I think a couple of the stories that were sort of interesting. The early mention of Stonehenge was in about 1135 when Godfrey of Monmouth, that's the guy's name, and he said that they were brought by a tribe of giants from Africa to Ireland, and from there they were flown over by the wizard Merlin across the sea. Good story, huh?
Don't you believe it? The thing that I think is so fascinating, you know, I'd been there before. Well, you had too. But when I first looked at it, I wasn't a bit impressed. I thought, oh, God, that's just a pile of rocks, you know. But then when looked into it a little bit further and found the little history of it. Do you know it's a religious place,
Right.
and the
And it was a temple.
and the astronomers. It was fascinating because when they built the Stonehenge, they had to have really precise astronomical knowledge of the path of the sun, because
Sure.
as the sun moved, the sun rose at dawn in the summer, and then so everything was based on that. So this is what makes them think that it was formed as a temple, and the solstice came into effect there. And I don't really know too much about solstice, except that's when it's the longest day of the year and the shortest day of the
Right.
year, and they can test by the way this has been set out
Pretty
that
smart.
they knew that in those days. So I thought that part.
Well,
was
it is. No, it's
interesting.
very interesting. And of course, it's Stonehenge is located on the Salisbury Plain. And speaking of Salisbury, we have just entered the village of Salisbury. And this place is not visited by an awful lot of people. It's not a place that everybody goes to. However, it's a very historical town. And Betty, this is
Flowers,
the house. That's what I want to
flowers,
buy. I want that house right there. The little
Okay.
gardens and that place.
I'll write a
That-
check. You can make out a check.
I don't think
and-
so, because this belongs to the grounds of the church. Now, this is not the church. This is another one that's located over on the side. When I'm talking about the church, I'm speaking about the Salisbury Cathedral, which is one of the finest medieval cathedrals in Britain. And it's the mother church, of course, of the Salisbury Diocese. And, of course, at one time, this was a Roman Catholic church. Today, it is an Anglican church.
Well, most of them were, weren't they?
Yes, that's true.
So what else is new?
It was started in 1220 and listen to this, completed in 1258. Now the spire that you see, and we're sitting down here having lunch, and they've added this wonderful window roof area so that you can sit there and have your lunch and look up at the cathedral right here. Anyway, the spire was is the tallest spire in England. Is 404 feet, but it wasn't added until another 100 years after the cathedral was already done. So there are, even though I say that it's not the most popular place in London, or in England rather, there's about 600,000 visitors that come from all over the world to see the cathedral. Now, what I was going to say is that the close is the area around the cathedral, and that's where that house, of course, is located. So
And
I don't think
this-
they'll sell it to me.
I don't think so either. That's the CLOSE,
Right.
close, right? But you see, there's still people living there in the
Oh,
close.
that's true.
Yes,
There are,
yes,
yeah.
there are.
And so I don't think that they're going to,
know,
maybe they would rent it to me. I don't know. Let's listen to our guide for a moment.
Now the only stained glass that's original here is in this window. Depending on your point of view, sadly or fortunately, in the 18th century, Salisbury Cathedral had an architect in charge of the building who liked light. He stripped a lot of the decoration out of the church, and he also took away the stained glass, putting in these clear windows which certainly fill this church with more light than the average cathedral. I like it, but I wouldn't like to see every cathedral like that. So it sort of just depends on your point of view, really.
Well, I'm glad that they did let a lot of light into the church, because otherwise we would not be able to videotape inside of it. There was a little ceremony that was going on way up toward the high altar up there, and I wasn't quite sure exactly what that was. It wasn't a full-fledged service, but I know, Betty, when we've been in this cathedral before, we have seen some of the services. And this, I thought, was so interesting. This was added, I mean, this is new. I hadn't seen this before, but it's sort of a little model of how the people kind of lived and built the church when they did that back in the 1200s. And it's really, I mean, they've done a beautiful job with this.
It's just a mock-up of it, huh?
But it sort of gives you, an idea that you could just sort of place yourself right in there, and you see all of this handwork that had to be done. And whoever put this together did, I think, a magnificent job of that.
We've seen this before in various places that we've gone. There was, when we were in Jerusalem, they had a reproduction of what the town of Jerusalem
That's
looked like.
right.
And it seems to me like in Scandinavia, didn't they have a whole mock-up village of Scandinavia.
Yeah, that's right.
So because it gives you a clearer picture. You stand there and you go in that cathedral, and I come out with a stiff neck because
You're like me. I want to see everything that there is to see.
And
right.
you look up and you look up and you look up and you think, oh my God, my I wonder why my neck hurts me. So that is the reason.
No, it is something. But and this old clock. This clock is hundreds and hundreds of years old. There's so many things to see, inside the cathedral here. I mean, you could spend a long time. And what I like too is if you want to, they have docents there, that volunteers, people that belong to the parish, and some of them are very well versed in all of the history and all parts of the cathedral. So if you're ever going to take a trip to London, you can catch a train and go on to Salisbury and spend a day or two over there. It's a beautiful town.
Beautiful place to visit.
Yeah, I think it's just great. And you have to see the cathedral.
The amazing thing, too, about this cathedral, Marv, is the fact that it was not built by a lot of architects, only one. And it didn't take, it's been over the centuries for most of them. But this was completed in just 38 years. Now, that's the main body that I'm talking about. But in 38 years, and you see, when you have the same architect, there's not a conglomeration of different types of architecture that it's a new one coming in.
That's very true. Yeah, because you're right. Because as you travel around Europe, and some of these cathedrals and some of these churches, go on forever as far as the building, and you're going to find Gothic and Romanesque or whatever, all mixed in together. That's very true.
But you see, another thing I thought was so fascinating about this was the spire on the top of it. And to think that it's still there after all these years, but they say because it's built on a foundation of rocks, the churches, and it's the tallest in the world.
Yeah, well, it's tallest in Britain.
Oh, is that all?
Yeah,
I thought, come on.
We're going to listen here because they stopped everybody for just a moment so we could listen to the rector.
As together we pray, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit be with you and remain with you this day and always. Amen.
I thought this was so nice that we remember that this is a holy place, and that they, about every hour, they stop and someone from the church, one of the priests, will lead everyone in a prayer. And it's nice because everybody stops and really sort of participates in that. Betty, in this church, a very famous document was signed. What was it?
You gonna let me give that answer?
Yeah, because you know the answer to that.
I can hardly stand it. The Magna Carta.
Which was or is?
Which was a fundamental guarantee of rights and privileges for everyone. Sort of like our Bill of Rights, or our Constitution, freedom of religions. But that was a gigantic thing to have happened.
Well, of course.
That was in 1215.
Something else,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. As we stated, the grounds around here are called the Close, and the Close was also designed by another very famous architect who was...
I'm overwhelmed with your being so nice to me. Sir Christopher Wren.
Right, and who designed a lot of great buildings. Yeah,
he's very famous. This day, people talk about Sir Christopher Wren, yeah.
Oh, well, they should, because he's just, he did a lot of other things that we'll see in this whole series as we travel through Great Britain. And of course, we're just starting. This is just a second stop that we've made on our very, very first day here, and we're just about ready to go outside the Close. But there are other buildings that are here. I just wish we had more time to show you more, because it is very, very lovely. And as I say, if you have not been to Salisbury, it is a gem of a beautiful, beautiful place that you just have to see.
Marv,
Yeah.
is that where the name Salisbury steak comes from?
I wouldn't
You
be a bit
think-
surprised.
How was is the food? I mean, no, they wouldn't have be ground up steaks over there like
Why
we
not?
have it here. I don't know.
Did you ever have steak and kidney pie?
No,
You know,
I
that's
well,
typically
we
English.
did that in England, but
Yeah.
I said I'd have the steak but leave out the kidney.
I had one day for lunch, and it was good.
But that was
they
a
could
cute
have left
little
out the
pub,
kidneys.
wasn't
You're
it,
right.
that we
yeah.
went to. But Marv, they have 600,000 people a year here, so you have to want to kind of watch when you go.
That's true. Well, yeah, but that's not very many. If you consider, we go up, when we go up to the Lake District, or over here to Bath, the city what we're in right now, which gets well over 1 million or 2 million visitors a year. So that's not too much.
Well, 1 million is only 400,000 more.
Yeah,
And
but
it's
when
a
you're trying
city,
to
it's a big city.
when you're trying to get a cup of coffee or a steak and
Oh,
kidney
yes.
pie, it could make a difference.
Of
We're
course.
in the beautiful, beautiful city of Bath, and of course this was developed by the Romans. And the baths here this is the only area that I understand in England where it's the thermal water, the hot water is coming up and still doing it. But the Romans took good advantage of this, and they built their temples here too. And this was all dedicated to the goddess Minerva. And where we are standing right now is over the baths, and we'll take a look down at it, and we'll be able to see that. And Betty, what really impressed me, I think this time over last time, is that they've done more excavations, and I had a chance to wander around. Now that's not my lens; that was a dirty window looking through. And here, the King and Queen of England, one of the former ones, a picture of them.
Look at that
also
water.
visiting.
Boy, it doesn't make me want to jump in and take a bath. Ugh.
Well,
It's slimy.
it's a little greenish looking, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
But
they needed a little. What do you put chlorine in a pool or something?
Well, then you're going to
But
ruin
of course,
the
they
effect
don't.
of it
They
all.
don't want you in there.
No.
anyway.
Well, you see, this became also very, very fashionable at one time too. I mean, later on, of course, after the Romans left, and because the people also believed, and probably still do, that the water has a healing power to it.
The thing that I thought
me.
was very, very interesting is that the Saxons and Romans came there, and they made really good use of those thermal waters, and they used them for curative purposes. And they actually had a bath for lepers.
right.
So they would isolate certain sicknesses, and you would go into those baths. And they do have some rings hanging up and it's like we do in our churches when somebody goes to Lourdes or
Yeah.
where they hang up crutches and things to show they're cured. Well, they have these rings hanging up that shows that from that long ago that there were cures.
Isn't
Isn't
that, I know that's
Yeah.
true. And then as English society developed, and here's what sort of looked like, I guess, during the early times. Then they would come, because it became very fashionable, to go take the waters at Bath.
Oh, this has tickled me, this thing. I was thinking with that, if they'd had more modern medicine, she could have had some liposuction.
That's one of the original statues that the Romans had.
I know, but
Yeah.
that was the
Well,
very historic.
Why not?
And
But as you can see now, they are putting a lot of this together. And here are some of the floors, the mosaics, beautiful, beautiful designs, the mosaics. And the thing is that they keep doing more of the restoration work. And this is sort of how it may have looked like at the
what
very
they call
beginning.
the rings, huh? They built the rings. Is that really, do you think, or am I just imagining?
No, I think you're right, because here, what I saw this time that I didn't see before was where they have excavated more pools, different ones. I mean, not just the main one that we have seen here, but other ones as well. And of course, now this is all subterranean, so we're down below street level, and this was the courtyard of the temple. And of course, we know that the Romans had built temples all over what is now Europe. And this was a very, very important one where they were here.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of artifacts that they have found, and there are some of them that are on display right here, as we can see. And one of them in particular, this one right here, looks like this was made out of gold. And what the sign says is that it may have accidentally dropped into a spring as somebody was,
The king's helmet or crown or
could
something.
have been, or it could have been a very, very wealthy
Yeah.
woman who wore
Something on her
like
head.
that in her hair, you know. But as we can see here, there are more of the artifacts that are here, and I'm so glad that they have preserved these so well, and they are displayed so well. You're only seeing just a small portion.
But you know,
of this
one
here.
thing too, though, Marv, nobody swam in the spring itself because it was
No, it was a holy site.
it was a
Right.
sacred site, and worshippers. But the worshippers would throw in offerings to the patron, their deity.
Probably Minerva.
Yeah. And like, where do we throw things in the water? Where do we? Where
Oh,
do, where
people
we?
are still
Where
doing
do
it.
we go that we throw things? Only we throw coins,
3 coins in a fountain.
right?
In Rome.
Right on. So it's still a custom that's being carried on.
That's true. This was the flicker is that because I'm shooting a television set, and this is sort of a compilation of how it may have looked during the days of the Romans. But they are doing so much work now, and some of it you can't really get into, but you can look at a lot of it. Here, this young lady is up here, and she's piecing together from these ruins more of the decorative pieces that came from the early temples there. And again, here's more of the flooring. There's beautiful, beautiful work.
beautiful?
There's mosaic work. You know, I think the Romans and the Greeks too were just noted for that.
Would you like a little technical knowledge, sir?
Very little. Yeah, no.
Well, I mean, I went to all this trouble.
Okay.
I think you should let me say it
Right.
anyway. All right. The thermal waters rise from a depth of about 3,000 meters, which is 10,000 feet, at a daily rate of 1/4 million gallons. A daily.
A day.
Now
That's a lot of water.
daily. And it's a constant temperature of 116 degrees. That's centigrade.
Pretty good,
Yeah,
right?
That's good. And they thought to originate as rainwater which fell from the hills and then came down, and they reached to the 80,000 years ago. Can they prove 80,000 years ago?
I
But
don't
isn't
know.
that
It's a
marvelous?
long time ago.
And they just built they bored a new spring there in 1984
Yeah.
to have the water, keep the supply
Mm-hmm.
going. So it evidently the supply is going to be I guess inexhaustible.
For a long time.
Huh?
Hopefully
Now
hopefully
keep
so.
those rains coming and all
Well,
that.
and it does, as you know, in England, it does rain quite a bit. But I'm just glad that we had the opportunity again to visit the baths here. Now, we're outside now in a little courtyard, and this is what's called the pump room. Is right to our right-hand side, and there's a beautiful restaurant in there now. But that's where the fashionable English ladies used to come in their carriages, and they would come and then they would drink this awful smelling water. And it was a very fashionable thing to do. I imagine they probably had to hold their nose while they were drinking it.
It was. I read a book a long time before I ever went here about that era, and it was so society. And the mothers would sit there with their daughters along the rim,
Mm-hmm.
and the gentlemen would come up. But if you didn't go to the baths when it was the proper season, forget it. You were out. You didn't belong
You were
anymore.
not doing the social thing to do,
you
right?
You didn't belong
Right.
anymore.
Well, here, of course, is the river that runs right through the city of Bath. And
Niagara
of course,
Falls.
It's beautiful. Well, there was a swan there. I had to take a picture of that. But remember this bridge, Betty? There's another one like it, of course, in Italy. And this is a covered bridge, and there are shops in it. And this is the only other one
That's
that I know
Florence.
of.
that is the Bridge of Sighs.
Yeah.
No. There's the Bridge of
there's one-
Sighs
there's
in
one
Venice.
in Venice, right.
Uh-huh.
Right. And of course, I want to take a picture of a barge because I know that your son
Yeah.
has a barge in France.
That's
And
right.
these are little barges that you can rent, and they're kind of small and kind of long, but
Ponte
they're
Vecchio.
interesting.
Ponte
Point
Vecchio.
Vecchio, right,
Yeah.
right. And there are gardens here, of course, too. Beautiful gardens, and I don't care what time of year you're there, whether you're there summertime or wintertime, they keep these gardens up, and they are really quite beautiful. They have a lot of sculptures in there as well, and all types of different plants.
Well,
Oh,
the
beautiful.
weather allows this. They don't have the real heat and the real freezing cold. It can get cold.
It
but
can
yeah,
get cold,
It can
you're
get
right.
cold. I realize that. But when you have more temperate climate, all of these beautiful. Are those annuals or perennials? I guess they're perennial. I don't know what. Do you know what that means?
No, but I'll tell you. Yes, I know. I do know what that
Oh, you
means.
do?
And
Okay.
and the person that I asked was Roland. Roland was on this trip, and so a lot of us, we would run into these plants and say, Roland, what is this? And he would know the answer to it.
He would certainly
Oh,
know.
yeah.
I think this was his 13th
In fact, there
trip.
he is right now giving
Yeah.
us a little, telling us exactly what it is, you know.
13th trip that he's gone with us.
Yes, he's traveled with us an
traveled
awful lot.
with us a lot.
Now, this is our first hotel that we're staying in, and
Wow.
it was a little nice. I will have to say that. I just felt like we were royalty, and
Well, we were.
but of course,
Oh, it was. It was
this
just
this is
beautiful.
very nice.
Just
and
very, very beautiful.
So the entryway here is sort of a double entryway, as you can see. And this, of course, was a big manor house at one time, and it had sort of fallen into disrepair. But someone took it and redid it up grand. It's just beautiful. And they added, of course, modern rooms off to one side of the hotel, and it very, very nice hotel.
I don't remember. Was it full?
I'm not sure. All I remember is this, that we had such great food.
Look at the food.
Oh.
And you know what was so good about it? We could order off the menu.
That's right.
You don't always get to do that on a tour because everything is sort of done in advance. But this was...
On this whole tour, though, we had, everywhere we went,
ordered-
we were able to, and there, speaking of that, there's Wednesday's menu right there.
do you remember what you had?
I didn't have the duck, I had the salmon.
I'm surprised you didn't have duck because that's something you do like and we don't have it too often. You have salmon a lot.
Well, yeah, every time it's served.
Yeah, but no, you buy it and cook it at
Oh,
home.
sure, I love
mean,
it. Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
Good for you, brain food. I need as much as I can get.
Now,
That's just
that's
a
right. Tell me what
You don't have to agree with me.
I don't remember.
This is the library. And that's of
Okay.
course where they served us. We had both our dinner, and then we also had our breakfast there too. And
Elegant. Just
Oh,
elegant.
yes, it was so nice.
Now, see, don't you wish you'd gone with us?
Pardon me.
I'm not you.
Oh,
I'm
I was
talking
there, yes.
I'm talking about our viewers. I'm talking about the viewers.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, it was beautiful. And the gardens here, we're going to show you on the next adventure. We'll start here at the same place to show you some of the beautiful gardens that we were able to walk through. This was a magnificent place to stay, and
Yeah.
I have to say I was very, very impressed.
I was ready to leave.
Pardon me. You're
Forget that.
Everybody wanted to stay on and on. Hey, that's all the time we have. If you're interested in our trips, give Betty a call at.
488-7443.
See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.